Well, listen, this is KK Downing right here with me, Jack Antonio on Do You Know Jack, man? And you sound like you're doing well, all things considered, eh?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, looking forward to the new year, upward and onwards.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, obviously, the subject of our conversation here today is your book, which came out last September, Heavy Duty Days and Nights in Judas Priest. For all intent and purpose, it seems like the reception has been relatively good, I think.
Yeah, actually, yeah, much better than expected, I guess. The publishers, I believe, are very happy, and it was good to see that the book was amongst the Rolling Stones top 6 or top 8, something like that, of music books for 2018. So that was very good news.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I guess the operative question now then is, after I think going on almost an 8-year absence from Judas Priest, I mean, what made you decide to come out with a book at this point in time, KK?
As we know, and all the fans know, and everyone knows, it's kind of inherent within bands. People leave and people return, and that's what happens. As obviously all of the fans would know that Rob actually departed the band for 14 years and came back.
Yeah.
So I thought, it's an ever-changing world. I thought that at some point there might be an opportunity for me to step back in, but but the years rolled on, and so I thought last year I was invited to do the book, and I thought, well, it's probably for several reasons, good reasons, it's probably best to do it now, because unfortunately time is never really on people's side, and it certainly isn't on my side now. Obviously, I'm 67 years old now, obviously.
Yeah.
Still fitting well, but things, the memory, I'd probably be lying if I thought that my memory was 100%, so while I was able to, I thought that it was a good idea to document my story and get for the fans to get to know me, KK, as opposed to just knowing of me, and also to just basically shed some light on the reasons of my departure. No real big deal, but these things happen in relationships, short or long term.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, one of the big pieces of news that came out with this book was just how abrasive your relationship was with Glenn. I mean, I guess one of the strong suits of this book is the honesty that you put forth in terms of the subject material. What was your strategy there in terms of just how you would handle some of that kind of stuff that people might see a little bit more controversial?
Yeah, lots of people, as we actually speak right now, are in relationships. And, that can be husband and wife, and lots of people, they amble on with a relationship and continue to try to make it work, for lots of good reasons. I mean, lots of people stay married and try to make their marriage work, for the sake of the kids or whatever else it might be, And I think that was probably the case in Judas Priest, and it's probably equally the same with all bands, really. There's a common reason for several guys to get together, form a relationship, work together day, night and day, but everyone's striving for the same goal, to be successful and to make a living out of what you do, and everybody has a good reason for holding it all together. So that obviously becomes various points for different reasons. Strain creeps in, I guess, and some guys think, well, forget this. I don't have to keep trying so hard in this relationship. I can go it alone, you know, as Rob did in 1990.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's great if it works. That's great if it works. But if it doesn't, you have to return to the fold, you know. But I think it's fair to say that all relationships, you know, you have to work at least a certain percentage, you know. There's a lot of times where you have to bite your lip, and there's a lot of times when you have to say what you think should be said.
Yeah.
You know, and getting that balance right is a difficult one, you know, because obviously it can be the situations can be very tense and volatile in bands, you know. And usually when something needs to be said, it's usually when the situation arises and it is very volatile, and that's the hardest time to say something, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
lots of people hold things in and then they let it out at the wrong time, at the worst possible time, and then there's an explosion, and then something destructive usually happens, I guess. Anyway, that's my theory and philosophy on the whole thing, I suppose, having lived through it.
Yeah,
But
for
it
sure.
doesn't mean to say that we don't have, you know, ultimate respects, and, you know, there's lots of other things. You know, I mean, for example, with myself and Glenn, we had a lot of things in common, you know, lots of things we like to do in our leisure time. We had music in common. We had an awful lot of things in common, like a lot of people in relationships. But the things we disagree with really start to manifest and become big things, you know, and they can overshadow the better things that are going on in the relationship. But
there's the kids, which I suppose in the case, if you're using that metaphor that abandons a marriage, I suppose then the children are the fans, and sometimes, you know, people stay in marriages for the sake of the kids too.
Yeah, it's exactly that. We have to consider the fans, because the longer the relationship is, you know, then the more strain everywhere, really, because as you quite rightly say, you know, you've got a fan base and you feel you're obligated, you know, but you're happy to be, really, because you don't want to lose that fan base, and you don't want to disappoint people. I mean, I was a music fan, you know, when Jimi Hendrix split up with Noel Redding and Mitch Mitchell, I was just devastated.
Yeah.
And when the Cream broke up, I went to the Royal Albert Hall and saw those two farewell Cream concerts. You know, I was absolutely devastated, you know. So I know what it means to fans, you know, and the band feels it as well. And that's why when guys make that decision, something is usually forcing them into doing it.
Yeah.
You know, that guy doesn't usually, it's rare, I think, that a guy says to himself, well, do you know what? I'm the be-all and end-all of this band. I write the songs. I'm the best musician. You know, I'm the best looking. You know, I'm everything. You know, I'm going to leave the band. You know, I think that those occasions are very few and far between, because I think everybody that's in a band, you know, joins a band because they feel that they want to be in a band and they should be in a band.
Yeah.
And want to be a part of a band. So it's usually what happens. It's the interactions and things that people do when you think, hang on, that is wrong. I'm fed up with this. I don't think anybody, you know, makes a rash decision overnight to leave a band. As I point out in my book, even I composed a leaving letter at the end of the Painkiller tour in about 1990, but I didn't send the letter in. I sat on it for a while, and then Rob sent his letter in, and he left first, you know.
He stole your thunder.
Sorry? Yeah, well, you know, it was very destructive, but if everyone asked Rob, turned the clock back and asked Rob why he left, if he told the truth, you know, there might be certain things that are synonymous with what I actually say in my book.
That's an interesting point, and you know, I know that there's a very short section where you speak about the arrival of Tim Ripper Owens, and I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but just a few days ago, a story broke that where he seemed to corroborate some of the things that you said in the book, which I thought was interesting, the timing of it, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, everyone that has been a part of Judas Priest will know how it works, internally, and exactly what the situation is and what it's all about. And Tim certainly would be very, very aware also, as everyone else, how everything is, in the
For
camp,
sure.
so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I said before, Rob left the band. Dave Holland left the band permanently. Les Binks before that. Unfortunately, that he departed the band, and that was unfortunate because he was a great addition to the band. Les was.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm not the first one to leave Judas Priest, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, now, like, I know you've personally stated that the door is potentially open for a return, but I mean, what, like, why is your situation seem to be different than Rob's? I mean, I suppose one could say Rob's the vocalist, but I mean, you've made significant musical contributions to Priest, obviously.
So, as I said before, I said it, but I was shocked and stunned, that the guys didn't go, okay, whatever. Plan now is not going to continue. Are you of a mind to step back in, 7 or 8 years later? I mean, things change. I mean, Rob changed his mind, didn't he?
Yeah.
But the thing is, obviously, if I wasn't, I think it's fairly apparent, as I said before, I want to point out that I do have total respect for my bandmates, and irrespective of what happened or whatever will happen, nothing can take away those 40 plus years that we lived and worked together, and we created a fantastic legacy and a brand name of Judas Priest. And,
for sure.
And nothing could take that away. And we all needed each other to do it, and we did it. So, I still hold total respect to all my bandmates.
Yeah.
But, idiosyncrasies, they creep in eventually. And it's okay when you're young. You're young, you're strong, you've got no money, you've got no success, no fame. There is nothing, you just keep fighting a good fight and trying to continue to work on. But eventually when you start to make money, it's because probably you start to get more famous. And then inevitably you get kind of an order starting to create, a certain pecking order, or that starts to infiltrate and set itself in, and that's kind of what you have to go and deal with,
for sure, yeah,
as the years go on. But I'm sure there's no doubt in my mind, because I know a lot of people in a lot of bands, and I'm it's a familiar story. It's kind of what happens. A lot of people want more of the fame and more of the glory.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just moving on from this, one touchstone record for me personally is Defenders of the Faith, and I noticed a very significant anniversaries just past. January 4th, 1984 was when the album officially dropped, of course, and that's 35 years, KK.
Yes. And that seems one of our more recent albums to me. That's 35 years. So, it's been a long haul, but as I said before, I'm immensely proud of me, and I'm even more immensely proud of Judas Priest and who we are and what we achieved. More immensely proud of the fans, the devoted fans,
for sure,
that have been with us for so many years.
Yeah. Now, I know in the book you mentioned that the 4-song combo of Freewheel, Burning, Jawbreaker, Rock Hard, Ride Free, and The Sentinel might be the four of the more cohesive tracks maybe of any metal record you can think of. But there's also a couple of other really fascinating things going on here. For instance, Eat Me Alive put you guys on the Filthy 15. Do you remember that time period? Were you shocked when Dee Snider was sort of chosen to carry the metal flag into battle? Do you remember watching the Senate hearings? Because that anniversary just passed as well.
Yeah, I do. I remember it well. Yeah, that was just as I mentioned before, just one of the many battles that we had to fight as a band. You know, Judas Priest. But
Yeah.
we weren't alone. You know, lots of people seem to be, you know, out there gunning for rock and metal. You know, the genre of music as a whole, really. You know, certain institutions or organisations, they wanted to kind of suppress,
Yeah.
you know, what we were doing. But it was never going to happen because the machinery was already, you know, rolling at such a fast pace, you know, because the fans were ready to stand strong. Not just the bands, the fans were ready to stand very strong for what they wanted and what they believed in also.
Yeah, I can recall, you know, I was reasonably young back then, and I can recall, you know, church rallies and books being written about how terrible metal was and all kinds of crazy stuff. I remember going to one particular rally with a church youth group of mine where they gave us free pizza, and the guy handed out a book that was talking all about how heavy metal was responsible for all kinds of debauchery. It must he delivered an hour long he delivered an hour long I guess for lack of a better word sermon on you know how terrible, you know, bands like Judas Priest were, and there was lyrics that were being quoted and everything.
Yeah, no, it's not good. I can remember even before Judas Priest was, you know, of any size. I mean, I think we toured with Kiss in 77, 78 maybe, with the band Kiss, you know, we were I think that was our first, you know, one of our first American tours. But even then, people were campaigning outside the shows, and they were big shows, you know, and Kiss were getting the brunt of that, you know, not Judas Priest. I think we were kind of insignificant at the time, but we were on the bill. But even I was astonished. I was absolutely astonished because, you know, I watched the Kiss show and I thought, you know, and there's youngsters in there, you know, so young, you know, and I'm talking real young, you know, they're like 10 years of age, I think, I'm sure, you know.
Yeah.
So many youngsters there. And but to me, I'm thinking this is a lot of fun, you know, it's about like a futuristic rock band. That was my perception. Because, you know, I'm thinking of Kiss. Who are Kiss? You know, because I'm from England.
Yeah.
I'm there in the blues and the rock and the metal scene. So I go to America and I'm thinking, okay, these guys do it in a different way. But I can see what it's all about. It's all about entertainment, you know, and that's what it was. It was a rock and roll circus to me, which was entertaining, you know, and all sorts of things. Ace Frehley shooting these fireworks from his guitar and all of this stuff. I'm thinking this is great family entertainment. That's what I could say. But even then, that was under fire. That was kind of under the gun, you know, even back then. So it was bound to rear its ugly head when, you know, Ozzy, Sabbath, Priest, you know, when all of that started to happen. But luckily, you know, I mean, as people probably know, we had to go through the court case in Reno.
Yeah,
and after that, it seems to have cleared the way, which was for everything that everyone wants to do musically in the future, which is great.
One other track I know that you talk about from Defenders of the Faith is Love Bites, which I found it interesting that people were hurling those accusations about it potentially not being metal, because I never really, as a fan of Judas Priest myself, I never really saw it that way.
No, one thing's for sure. I mean, Judas Priest, we did actually compose quite a few songs along the way that people went, I'm not sure about this, not sure about that, but we would go and play it live in amongst all of our other songs, you know. And I can remember Love Bites in particular was just great to play live, and yeah, I think the fans really did like the song. But the point about the 4 songs that open that album, I think the comment I made was the fact that I don't think that there's another record, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's got 4 opening tracks that are just so absolutely full on, as much as the 4 tracks that open up Defenders of the Faith, which I'm quite proud of.
Yeah.
I guess we must have made a concerted effort to think, okay, when people put this album on, we want them to think this is the absolute nuts, So we put those 4 tracks back to back, and boy, when I listen to it now, I'm thinking, that's just quite something, really. That would have been good if you'd have had 10 tracks just like that on an album. But that's probably what we were thinking when we came around to Painkiller, maybe, later on, trying to make the strongest and best album we possibly could.
Well, listen, before I let you go, I know you chose, was it you that made the conscious choice to choose Mark Eglinton for your, your co-author? Were you aware of his work?
Yes, actually. I had been approached quite a few times from various authors, but as Mark was in the UK and Mark had just done, he was quite well known, and he'd just done Rex Bound's book From Pantera, which I could recommend everyone checks out. And so I thought I'll have a conversation with Mark, and when I found out how much he knows about rock music, I was quite taken back, really. Him and his brother would be, metal fans from the very early days, and they would come and see Priest and Saxon and Scorpions and all those guys, as kids. So I thought it was the right man for the job, and I'd say it was a very, very good choice,
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, like I said, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I mean, what's the future looking like for KK Downing here in the next few years? You mentioned how you're 67 years old now, so I mean, what's your next step here in the process?
Yeah, well, I think people, they do say now, and I do feel it myself, that when I was a kid growing up, somebody that would be 67 years old to me would be a very old person. I don't feel like that, I still feel, I'm the same. Yeah, I can get up and do it again. I'm always primed and ready. I get lots of invites, which I do turn down reluctantly, because there are lots of people I know and I've become good friends from various bands over the years, and it would be lots of fun and good to do something. But I'm thinking that, if it's not Judas Priest, then maybe it's best to just leave it there, really. I'm not of a mind to start over again, but something neat could pop up, something neat could happen, I don't know. But when it's kind of difficult, I guess I was kind of in a mage for all of those years. And so it's a case of just treading carefully, really, because it is very time-consuming, just to get involved again with new people, and there's lots of things logistically that need to happen. So it's a lot of hard work and time, and I don't know. There might be a better position for me. Exactly what, I don't know, really, Jack. But I'll see what this year brings.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of things I need to do myself.
Yeah.
I'll see what see what this year brings, and but I will be making definitive decisions at some point, I guess, this year as to where I go next.
Well, it's been a pleasure and an honor talking to you, man. The book is Heavy Duty: Days and Nights in Judas Priest. Came out last September, but it's a read that I highly recommend. And thanks again, KK, just for chatting with me here today on Do You Know Jack?
It's been a pleasure, Jack. And please give us send my very best wishes to all the Canadian fans. I know that we know that Canada, per square mile, per person, was the band's most successful territory, in actual fact.
Oh, wow.
Fans and for selling albums and stuff. So a big thank you to everyone for that. And I wish everyone, a fantastic new year, and hope to see you again at some point before it's all over.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks, man. Much appreciated. And you have a good rest of your day.
Cheers, chat, mate. Take care. Thanks for the call.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye, mate.